Well, hi everybody. Welcome to the Joe and Joe Weather Show,
On a
which
Tuesday night.
it is, and it is normally scheduled for 7 p.m. Eastern Time. It is, well, 7 p.m. Eastern Time, which is about as normal as normally scheduled you can get, and did not follow this morning's episode of Perry Mason entitled "The Case of the Shifty Shoebox."
Yes.
Oh,
With Bill
but
Mooney, with Will Robinson.
yes. By the way, by
And
the way,
Doris Day's father, Denver Pyle.
yeah,
For those of you who remember
that's
the
who
old
that was.
Doris
I was
Day
trying to, you
show.
know what? I was trying to put my finger on it. That was Denver Pyle. Okay, I was saying, what is the name of that man? He's so familiar, and where have I seen him? And you're
Right,
right, Doris Day's father in the Doris Day show.
right.
Who Doris Day orchestrated more outfit changes per episode than an entire fashion season in Paris. If you watch that
Amazing.
series, she
Amazing.
walked away with more clothes from those shows of hers than she must have. God bless her. And by the way, um, really an incredible talent, singing wise, and also acting wise in some of the movies she did in the 50s with the man who knew too much, Alfred Hitchcock with Jimmy Stewart. Great movie, and there's a few others that she's done along the way that I've seen. She doesn't get as much, she gets. She's known as an actress, and she did some wonderful movies and some wonderful comedies, but she was damn good.
If you were listening on the ABC radio network on November 22nd, 1963, they had a very popular midday show where they played some standards type music. And they had the record that she was singing, Hooray for Hollywood. And midway through Hooray for Hollywood, that's when they broke in and then made the first announcement about three shots were
Oh,
heard in Dallas, Texas. So
yeah.
you may remember her in a different light, those of you who were tuned in on that particular day.
I also want to point out to you, Joe, that we have a number of geoengineering folks that are watching tonight, and I just want to let them know that they will be spraying only the sides of the streets to which you live on in order to orchestrate a weather calamity over your particular area only. Okay, so just bear that in mind. I've got the buttons right here. I'm pushing and programming them even as we speak. And I'm saying this in reaction to somebody who put something up in the comments. I always love seeing how everybody seems to people who have it figured out that it's the guys in the dark glasses and the black suits that are kind of orchestrating primaries going to the Great Lakes. It just drives me crazy.
Well, that's going to be the main concern coming up later in the week is determining just how quickly the secondary takes over in this Miller B type scenario, as
Yes.
some of the synoptic forecasters like to call it.
And by the way, folks watching, if you're new to my YouTube channel, this is the Joe and Joe Weather Show, and my channel is Joe Chaffee, and conveniently that's because I am Joe Chaffee. But being that he's Joe Rayo, he has his own YouTube channel, Joe Rayo Weather, and you should go ahead and subscribe to that channel because we need to get him to 1,000 subscribers as quickly as we can.
As quickly as we possibly can get. We're already, as of this hour last night, haven't checked it today, but 501. So we're more than halfway to the top.
499 to go. I'm trying to get to 10,000, so I'm at. But I've been around longer than you have, you know.
Yes, yes.
And I
But
got
you're king of all media now.
yes, I'm 887 7 to go. So I really need a serious, solid snowstorm threat for the Northeast and Mid Atlantic states that include the I-95 corridor. And by the way, I just want to tell you folks on the chat board and folks at home, I do go and respond the to comments that are put up on the videos. It's just that sometimes I I get caught up in all the other stuff I got to do, so I may not get to them right away or the next day or the day after. But the day after that, okay, usually by the third day, I do get to them, and there's a couple of them that I want to bring up. Before I do that, I'm just running through the spam, which is always a good thing to do, since you do wind up with some crazy comments sometimes. Um, it's amazing how somehow this show occasionally pops up in the Bible in the book of Proverbs. Okay, so just letting you know that we're almost at that level. But
I'll tell you how great this show is. I was just telling you before we started. My sister just got from her boyfriend a 50-inch television, and she was up early this morning at 2:13 a.m. watching our broadcast from last night on her big screen television.
had she not had a big screen TV before?
Well, not as large as 50 inches. I don't even have a 50-inch screen,
Well,
but
really?
no, I have a relatively. I don't need to see things in a gigantic mode,
Well,
Joe.
I have to tell you, I have a I don't even know how big the one in my house is. Yeah, I'm kind of the same way like you. I don't really need to have a 50-inch screen either. I'm just trying to find a couple of comments here that I just wanted to bring up.
In fact,
Um,
would you like to see the television that is currently sitting in my living room right now?
sure, go ahead.
Hang on. I'll be back with you. Don't worry about the blackness.
Okay, what did you do? I guess he pulled down a curtain of some kind. I'm just trying to find this one comment on the board, folks. You know what? We're going to get to the weather shortly, but again, I'm just reading through some of the comments yesterday, this morning, and this afternoon, and catching up. I had someone who just kind of went off the deep end with regards to the geoengineering stuff, and I brought it up a little while ago. Really, I'm just not interested. So if you're gonna, if you want to talk about geoengineering, you can go ahead and do that on a geoengineering channel, where you'll be with other people who like to talk about geoengineering. We just don't really have any room for that sort of thing here. So go ahead. Um,
See, you want to see it? Here
yeah.
it is. Here's my here's my TV.
Oh my God. Does it still have tubes?
You like it? That's why
Adorable.
when I see people with like a 25-inch screen, I see, my God, that's a gigunda screen.
Please tell me at least you have a flat screen in your living room.
Oh, give me a break. He got that in the corner of the back room over here.
Oh, all right, Mrs. Rayo, but but I just want
It's
to make
still
sure you do have a regular flat screen TV in your living room.
Yes, we do.
Okay, very good. Um, Also, I told you we are being watched by an order of Franciscan nuns, I believe in southern Canada. I'm trying to find the comments that she left. It was Sister, I think it was Sister Gabriella. Thank you so much, by the way, for the very, very kind words. Joe and I both having Catholic educations. Yours stopped after traumatic experiences with with nuns named after CBS News correspondents
Sister
and
Charles
Sister
Edwards
Charles Edwards.
at
Uh,
St. Benedict's Parish in Throgsneck,
of
the
which
Bronx.
I know of and have been to mass to there on occasion, and also for me it was right through Catholic high school and 1 year of Catholic college. So
Can
it's
I
so
tell the
cool
story?
though. We're being watched by someone who has a hook upstairs.
I'm sure, but no, but I'm sure that it's not the same way now as it was back in the
Of
1960s.
course, it's not the same way. Nothing's the same way now as it
But
was back in the
I have to
'60s.
tell you this. I have to get, I told this story to my wife. My wife, by the way, is of the Lutheran faith. But I told her this story. I had to get my bosom buddy Andrew Maniglia, who at one time was deputy. He was the deputy mayor of Yonkers, and
Right.
my good friend who I grew up with in Throgsneck, and he too went to St. Benedict's. And I told this story when we were in training for confirmation. Some kid from PS14. This was catechism. This was on a Wednesday. This was at St. Benedict's Church. We're only a few days away from being confirmed. And this kid, for whatever reason, snuck in a cube or whatever of dry ice. And the dry ice, you could see the smoke emitting from the dry ice. And from a distance, you don't know what the heck that is. Sister Charles Edwards, like a like a bat, quickly flew down the aisle,
And we mean
found
flu, by the way.
found the kid who had the dry ice, told the kid to take the dry ice out of his hand, out of his pocket, which he did. He said, "Hold out your hand," and she did. She had to put the dry ice in the middle of his hand and said, "Now, close your hand." And you can just imagine how that must have
That
felt.
must have hurted
Yes,
in a
but
big way.
that was Sister Charles Edwards.
Well, you know what? Those were back in the days when nuns occasionally showed up in the Golden Gloves tournaments in Madison Round Garden. So, yeah, those are long gone. All right, so let's talk weather. By the way, so let's talk some weather. And uh,
Do you
right
remember the
now,
line? Do you remember the line when you were being confirmed that the priest or the bishop or whoever was going to give you a slight blow on the cheek
yes,
because
I
of
want
the
the blow on the head.
right? If it were up to Sister Charles Edwards, she would have brought a boxing glove in.
Oh, I'm sure she would have knocked half the class out. All right. So
Weather.
anyhow, enough reminiscing about those wonderful times of the past, and let's talk. Let's talk weather, and let's talk about wrapped up primaries going to the Great Lakes. I can sense. I can sense the snow lovers and the snow weenies' frustrations, if only from some tweets that I got. Uh, I'm not going to mention him by name because I'm not trying. I guess I don't know how to put this, but every time there's even the remote snow threat or a pattern change like we're going to now, it always becomes this sort of epic event, that cataclysmic event that's about to happen. The weather pattern shift that we're seeing is going to translate into a February and March that will make 2015 look like a day on Miami Beach. This is epic. That is epic. The system for the weekend is going to produce 8 inches on the south shore of Long Island and 10 inches on the north shore. And I've tried to kind of very nicely say you really can't do that. Okay, it's not. This is not being indicated here. Um, you're just trying to make. Making a silk's purse out of a sow's ear. But looking at what's happening, Joe, this is turning out to be, a fairly wrapped up primary that's moving across the northern lakes, and you're just going to have to, I think, from what I'm seeing right now, um, you're going to get down near the coast, maybe a 4 to 6 hour period. You better get a solid area of moderate to S plus that develops ahead of the snow sleet rain line, because if that doesn't happen, you're going to wind up with a coating to maybe at most an inch or so, and then it goes over to rain. That's my view.
Well, I knew we had trouble because this afternoon when the GFS has the 540 line, the line that we normally use to differentiate between rain and
All
snow
right,
or
let
ice.
me bring that up so everybody can see. So hang on one second. Where is it? Where is it? Let's got the GFS.
Now I'm talking about
And
the 12. I'm talking about the 12Z. I didn't see the
all
18Z.
right, so let's go to the 12Z run. I will bring it up for everybody to see.
But
And hang on one second. I'm almost there. I'm a little slow on the uptake today. Um, okay. All right, so when Joe's talking about the 540 thickness line, if you look on the map that I have up here from Tropical Tidbits, you see the red lines and the red dash lines and the blue dash lines. Those are thickness lines, and the first blue line above the last reddish dash line is the 540 thickness, which usually, not always, but it's kind of a general line that we look at as far as where the rain snow line could be. And I'm going to take it out to Saturday morning. And here we are at Saturday morning, Joe. So go ahead. You were saying about the 540 thickness. and I have the 18Z up. Do you want the 12?
Well, on the 12, the 540 didn't really move very much north of New York City.
Okay, so let's go here.
And you can see now, you see where it is now on
I'm
the
on
8.
no, I have the 12. I just flipped it over to the 12.
Okay,
Right on the 12, the 540 gets to about New York and never really gets much further north than that. The problem is, Joe, the upper levels are cold. It's that bottom 925 millibars down that go above freezing. So you're gonna this is one of these instances where it might be snowing at the top of the Empire State Building and raining everywhere else.
right. Well, what I was trying to say is that at 12Z, you've got the 540 hovering very close to New York City. Meanwhile, the European model shoots that 540 way up to the north, and I said, "Oh my goodness, what a change from recent days here." And
Yeah,
and
the 18Z, by the way, I'm noticing that the 540 actually winds up a little further south, but I don't think it really matters. I think you're still going to wind up with a changeover to rain at the coast at least, and you may wind up with a change all the way up to Albany before it ends.
right,
You may get a really decent shot of warm advection accumulating snow ahead of it before the changeover. And meanwhile, also have to talk about maybe some ice for parts of south central Pennsylvania, south and west into Maryland and northeastern Virginia for a little while because of cold air that the low level cold air is probably going to try and wedge in at least for a bit. But, Joe, the primary is just, we went from seeing a low that was going to cross southern Illinois, southern Indiana, maybe make it into northeast Ohio, and, stretch to a redevelopment somewhere. The high to the north trying to hold. And now we got this wrapped up primary that deepens to a 995 low in northern Lake Huron. And you could barely find a hint of a secondary low now going into Saturday afternoon or Saturday evening. It starts to really manifest itself Saturday night with a low maybe somewhere in northern Connecticut or northeast Connecticut over to Boston. And then you see it developing there when it gets to Nova Scotia, when, of course, who cares because it's already long gone. But you're going to have a really tough sell here with regards to holding on to this, even in some inland areas. Now, that's not to say that there can't be a solid area of moderate to heavy snow for a few hours before the changeover. I think that's what you have to look for. You're going to have that happen in order to put down anything substantial.
Trump.
Yeah,
So
and
to,
those are always difficult things to pull off. Now, I sent you my I did an early call today for my subscribers on my Patreon platform, and I'm going to bring it up, and I want you to tell me what you think. Not that this is a mutual worshiping society, but
well,
if I can bring the picture up here, hang on, trying. Oh, great! It comes up as a blank screen. Hang on. We try one more time, and then I will try to do it another way. No, doesn't want to happen. All right, let me go back to Chrome. Hang on one second, Joe. Let me bring up the map back up on the screen. Okay, so we'll do it. I'll bring it up another way. So let's get the paint box up. And okay, so this is my early call that I did. What I did today, just to try something different, is to take the WPC's probability of at least 2 inches, because this is still in their long range forecast outlook. We're talking about day 3 and 4. So I took that map and overlaid where I thought you would see, say, the 1 inch line, the 3 inch line, and the 6 inch line. So I don't know what you think about this.
well, do you want me to read what I read to you before we got on
No, I
here?
know you. I know what you. I know that you pontificated something I've said many times, and it's just too early to do. Now, I did this for my subscription folks, and now I'm doing
Right.
it for everybody here on YouTube. And normally, I would do an early call 72 hours before the first flakes fall. So I would have done this tomorrow morning instead of doing it today. But you know what? I figured, what the hey, go for it.
Well, I said on my Facebook discussion about this, this is after I posted the forecast, which runs all the way until next Tuesday, and then in my quote latest on weekend storm toward the end or toward the bottom of my discussion, I said a reminder. It's Tuesday afternoon, and we're talking about a storm that will impact us Saturday into Sunday. Still a long way out. With that in mind, too early to put specific accumulation numbers out there. And then 2 hours later, you send me the your first
Right,
guess.
I understand. So I did it 12 hours before I normally would do it. So I just want you to, and I'm just asking you, what do you think in terms
Well,
of
if
where
I
I
take
have
it,
this drawn?
no, if I take it at face value, yeah, those numbers look pretty reasonable, you know.
All right.
But we all know that it's going to flip and flop and flop and flip between now and let's say Thursday, Friday, or
Oh
whatever.
no,
So,
and listen, I'm anticipating a few more, a few more changes. And by the way, it's funny that you mentioned the European and how warm that run was today. And the European model has been we've seen it at least a few times this winter where it's gone really crazy bullish, being colder and snowier among the models until it gets into this shorter range window, and then suddenly it switched over. In this instance, it switched over and now seems to be the warmest of all of them. But at the end of the day, I think it really is going to come down to going back to that the primary. A wrapped up primary is not something that you want to see as a snow lover going through the Great Lakes. You just don't. This really then ultimately becomes a supercharged warm front. And you've got this really big cold high. It's going to be down in the teens to near 20, and in some places down in the single digits Saturday morning when this all starts. So if you can get the snow in here fast enough, you could get, you still could get that burst. And in fact, Joe, the 18Z today, I noticed on the GFS because it was a little bit colder on the 18Z. I'm sorry, let me just get the GFS up here. So it brought in, at least when you look at the radar echoes, by between 12 and 8, between 7 a.m. and 1 p.m., it's much faster bringing in the snow. So it seems like this run wanted to bring in the precip while there was still a fair amount of cold air around. And then, by 7 o'clock, sometime late in the afternoon or early evening, the rain snow line is up to New York City and through Long Island and somewhere in southern Connecticut up to about Route 84.
right, right. So see, I mean, like we still have. My goodness, if we don't expect the first flakes to start falling here until let's say noon on Saturday, what does that tell you? It's Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. It's still about 4 days.
Right.
So
And by the way, for those of you, you're watching at home and you look at these models. So one of the things I always do when you see when you use the GFS composite reflectivity, which is really showing you what the GFS thinks the radar is going to look like, okay? And this is for 7 o'clock in the morning on Saturday. You notice this light blue area here, okay? So you would think that it might be snowing in that particular area. One of the things you should do, just to make sure, is check the precip. All right. And if you notice on the precip map into Saturday morning, where it's got that northern edge of light blue, it either has very, very light measurable precip, a hundredth to 500ths for the overnight, or it has next to nothing. So it could be it could certainly be correct that the radar may look like this, but this northern fringe may just be Virga. And then when you look at here in the afternoon, this is at midday through 1 o'clock, much of the area that you see from New York City north and east, as far as precip totals are concerned, from here east is basically between zero point 0.01 and zero point 0.05. So we're talking about maybe a coating to half an inch of snow in that first lead batch. I would personally, if I was forecasting this, if you're going to want to forecast for something substantial, you want to see all of this area really saturated and quickly put down a quarter to a half an inch of liquid. I don't think that's going to happen. with that lead area of precip.
Right. Right.
So it's really, what do you get between 1 o'clock and say 4 or 5 o'clock with that area in here as it moves on up to the northeast for areas from New Jersey to southeastern New York, southern Connecticut, and Long Island. You're talking about a handful of hours before it changes. Now, inland and further west in western, maybe northwest New Jersey, on up through western PA. I'm sorry, on up through much of northern Pennsylvania, and maybe even extending down into parts of southwestern Pennsylvania. You may have you're going to have a much longer fight for the snow to change over to rain, in my view.
I'm just thinking here about how much longer we'd have to wait before we get into the time frame where the NAM FOOS will allow us to see the boundary layer temperatures, which are very important. But
Well, we
that's
got to go out 60 hours, so that would be Thursday.
yeah,
Thursday's show we'll be able to do that. We'll have the
right,
12Z Thursday run. Will take us into Saturday evening. Uh,
right.
as of maybe tomorrow, no, it won't be enough. It might be just getting into the edge of the starting time for the Les Plumes,
Yeah,
which go out
which
96 hours.
which didn't do so well, I
No,
might add.
they were terrible.
I forgot what the last storm that we had, the last potential snow.
Yes,
They were going 3, 4, 5 inches for the lower Hudson Valley. We didn't come even near
no, and then that was a few runs before at the start time, and then it backed completely off when it became pretty evident that all the development was going to stay offshore. So I'm going to widen this out here. I'm going to set this map up so we can take a look at what's happening. And Joe, I'm going to just quickly go over some of the local, some of the stuff that's going on tonight.
Danny Nan Kumar says Nam is the best, but Nam comes out too short. Well, that may be the best thing that in retrospect and thinking about this, Danny, and for everybody, it might be the best for all concerned if all the models stopped at 84 hours instead of having people playing around and looking at maps 15 days out that we all know is never going to verify. You
Right.
know?
Well, it'll never stop them from speculating. So,
Yeah,
um,
but that was the world we lived in, Joe, 30 and 40 years ago, because we didn't have very much to look at beyond 72 hours.
no, we didn't. So we had to actually figure it. We weren't really all that concerned about next week or next 2 weeks or next month.
Right,
We were very much more short term oriented. Even 5 days was a struggle.
exactly.
So tonight we've got the first winter weather advisories going up with we've got a couple of lows in play here. Winter weather advisories up for Iowa and northern Illinois, southwestern Wisconsin, and also parts of northern Minnesota into the Dakotas. And we've got winter storm watches, winter storm warnings, and winter weather advisories up for much of the Northwest and down into northern California and the Sierra Nevadas because we still have all this energy coming in to the west. And I believe those are winter storm watches that are up for a few counties in northeastern New York and northern Vermont. Now, this is for the system for late Wednesday night into Thursday because the low that's going to move across upstate New York and across central New England is actually going to intensify into a pretty important storm once it moves off the coast Thursday morning, and it's going to be having impact on our weather here. WPC, in terms of precip over the next 7 days, generally, with regards to the system that we're going to have over the weekend, is producing anywhere from 3/4 of an inch to 1.5 inches in a large area, covering pretty much everywhere east of the Mississippi and through much of the northern Mid-Atlantic and on up into New England, and actually slightly higher amounts because of what's going on short range in parts of Maine. Satellite tonight, another gloomy day down here, Joe, but I can see that the northern edge of the enhanced cloud line has now shifted southward, so it looks like we might be starting to slowly clear out here across parts of the Northeast, probably setting up for a good-looking day tomorrow. And you can see the energy that's moving from off the west coast across the plain states, and that's going to be heading eastward. We'll have a front coming through here for Wednesday night. And Mr. Rayo, why don't you? I'll bring up the GFS for Thursday, and you can talk about what you think is going to happen for Thursday.
Don't forget, we're about 1 minute behind, so I'm not seeing the GFS or your map just yet.
It will
I'm
be
still
there.
I'm
But
still
in
watching.
general, it'll be coming up shortly. But I have it up on the screen here, so you'll see it soon. But you got this low moving out and the big high moving in, the big wind for Thursday, I think.
Right. Oh, I have winds, Joe, for Thursday. I think we're going to be seeing winds sustained. And I'm talking about just for the Hudson Valley. I'm not even talking about coastal areas, although the Sound Shore probably will get higher winds. But I've got west northwesterlies, sustained or steady speeds, 15 to 20 miles an hour, with stronger gusts in excess of 40. And it could very well be in excess of 50 right down by the water's edge or maybe along the South Shore of Long Island and the Jersey shoreline. So it would not be at all surprising if once again, how many times have we done this in the last couple of weeks? Once again, we're going to see some sort of wind advisory posted for parts of our viewing area. And again, maybe for Sunday, after the big storm passes by
Right.
on Saturday or Saturday night, we may have another round of wind to deal with on Sunday as well. By the way, I'm looking at the experimental from Climate Prediction Center, the experimental risk of heavy precipitation valid from January 22nd to January 28th. And they have a slight risk from the 25th to the 27th. That's beyond this weekend. That's like
That's
late.
next weekend.
That's next weekend. They have the entire area from the coastline of Maine down to about Albany, and then over into central Virginia, then curving back to near Hatteras. That entire region in a slight chance for heavy precipitation. And I saw that. I said to myself, well, let's see how much they're talking about in terms of snow. And in terms of snow, they're not talking about anything. They're talking about the risk of heavy snow in that time frame, mainly confined to the Great Lakes area. So
Well, we'll show it on the long range because a number of runs have been kind of looking at that particular weekend also, which we didn't really spend a whole lot of time on because of the lead system. Most of the time we don't really like to talk about stuff in the long range if there's something in the short range. But looking at the map for Thursday on the GFS pressure gradient, high pressure on one side, low pressure on the other, large change in pressure, relatively small distance. That is the recipe for some very strong and gusty winds. And when you see a lot of isobars, folks, on a map like you do here between where the low is and where the high is, you're going to blow away. Now, you've got one system off the coast of Maine. You start to see the snow and rain developing back through Texas and down through North Texas and Kansas with some snow there. You've got energy that's still coming into the west. So you kind of see this sort of train of systems that are moving in what is really a fairly active pattern. Now, I'm just running through the GFS going into Friday. That high builds in. This is very cold air that is coming down. I think there are a lot of areas on Friday that are going to have a tough time getting out of the 20s, and we'll probably be down to the teens to near 20 Saturday morning. So at least initially, it's going to be very cold. But the problem is where the low is going. By the time we get to Saturday afternoon, you're starting to turn into what'll be like. I mean, the isobars almost have a southwest wind here. If you look at these isobars, Joe, they're more around the low than anything else. It's like a southwest wind. Now,
right.
if it was truly a 220 wind, which it probably won't be, but if it was a 220 wind, you probably could delay the changeover to rain to a certain extent. But no matter, we'll figure that out over the next couple of days. But this wrapped up primary crosses the Great Lakes, redevelops off the coast of Maine. So look, by Saturday, this is Saturday afternoon at 1 o'clock. The back edge of the precip is in eastern Ohio. The leading edge of the precip is at Boston. By Saturday evening, the back edge of the precip is to western New Jersey at 7 o'clock, which means it's probably just about done in New York City at 9 or 10 o'clock.
It's almost like a
Yeah,
cold front
yeah,
passing.
it's really a strong cold front into some very very cold air, and then after that, I mean, here comes more cold air, and as you said, you've got a wrapped up low in the Gulf of Maine on Sunday. That's a pretty tight pressure gradient that sets up yet again for Sunday night, and even into Monday. There's still a bit of the gradient because the high is so far to the west. Now, in the longer range. Joe, there's a lot of everything kind of shifts southward a bit now because of the fact that we're seeing this pattern shift, and the jet stream is being suppressed further and further south. So you do actually have late next week on this 18Z GFS. Now, of course, this is way out in the long range. A low that comes out of the Gulf of Mexico and becomes a powerhouse up the eastern seaboard. But the problem is that cold air, that cold high that comes down, that high, if this is right, goes off the New Jersey coast and out. So there's nothing holding the cold air in.
You don't want them to go off the Jersey coast. You want them to turn and move through upstate New York, up into northern Maine, eastern Quebec. That's where you want the high to go. If it moves offshore, off of the Jersey coast, in comes all that warm air advection, and that's it.
This is I mean, if this is right, we don't know that it is, but the model does go crazy with a really wrapped up 974 low east of the New Jersey and south of Long Island by next Sunday morning. I mean, this would be a pretty ferocious, windswept, soaking rain nor'easter type of thing, and you wind up with a 957 low just north of the Vermont Canada border. I mean, we'd be blowing away again if this is correct. And then it turns colder and drier behind it, which one of the frustrating things for snow lovers, in even in the best of patterns, sometimes you could have all the cold air around, but if you don't have it when the storms are coming out, and if you don't have those highs in the right place, you warm up in rain in a lot of places. And I know that can be very frustrating, but that is really the reality of how things work.
It's one after another. They're almost like on a conveyor belt, and yet, in spite of the fact that we have all this cold air coming in for later on in the week, it seems like every time we get cold, every time a storm is approaching, the cold air lifts out or lifts in the wrong direction, and it's just if you're waiting for a situation where it's going to stay all snow, it doesn't appear, at least in the foreseeable future, that that's going to happen.
Right.
But
the pattern change you want and the pattern change you get are not necessarily the same thing. You can go from, it's definitely changing. The trough in the west is gone. The ridge in the east is gone, replaced by a troughing in the east starting this weekend. And when that pulls out, there's another one that will come in behind it for next weekend. You see it there. And then there's yet another one that drops into the east behind that. So there's no question that the pattern has changed. And I will say that eventually one of these is going to have to produce something for the I-95 corridor. I mean, I can't imagine we're going to go, much longer without something setting up. I just don't know whether we necessarily will be able to see it on the models until it gets inside the 7-day time frame. But at least for now, we're still having to kind of clean up this mess of the last 4 weeks where the trough has been off the west coast and the ridge has been in the east. We've got to finish that process, which this weekend storm system will finally finish it.
And yeah, there's not much more to add to that.
No, there isn't. We've said it all.
Yes, you did.
So I'm going to go to the chat board now, see what everybody's saying. Got a nice little crowd tonight of 226 folks. If you're new, welcome. Use your Gmail account to subscribe to my YouTube channel, and use your Gmail account to subscribe to Joe Rayo's YouTube channel, Joe Rayo Weather. So my chat is moving really, really fast. I can't really read everybody. I would take, Ethan Bean says, I would take into consideration that cooler temperatures are possible along into the east of the Appalachians leading up to this event as the high pressure subsidence establishes cold air. I won't disagree with that, Ethan. I think the low level cold air is going to be important, and I also think that we're probably not going to be able to weigh the magnitude of that low level cold air until maybe Friday. So, but for now, I'm kind of skeptical. I don't like the fact that you've got this wrapped up primary the way you have it up in the Great Lakes the way it is.
Maybe snow weenies, according to Mary Schenkel, maybe snow weenies who are disappointed this Saturday might be a dud. I don't know. Well, I don't think it'll be a
Well, it
total.
depends.
It's going to start as snow,
Right.
no
It
matter.
also depends on where you are. I mean, if you're down here near the coast, if you're down here near the coast and you're thinking, uh, this is going to. I don't know. You know what, Joe? Here's the thing that frustrates me, and I don't know if I'm overreading it or perhaps I'm just misreading it. But you get a situation like this. How does it get blown up into the snowstorm of all snowstorms? You understand what I'm getting at here? I mean, this is the way these, we look at these, we see these storms approaching and coming out. How do they wind up getting into this conversation in social, throughout social media that we're seeing, something that is going to be far more monstrous than it actually will be? Let's put it
Joe,
that way.
it's the nature of the media beast. Sunday, we were coming off of a spectacular, beautiful day. Temperatures were again in the mid and upper 60s to near 70. And I remember watching, I think it was Eyewitness News. It was the 6 o'clock report. And the anchor person, the anchor woman who was setting us up for the news headline says, "It was a beautiful day today, but snow is on the way. We'll be back with more in a moment." And I'm saying to myself, is
On
it really?
Sunday?
This was on Sunday.
Well, yeah, I'll tell you something. I have something even more basic than that. So I was watching one of the local stations here in the People's Republic of the State of New York City, and so for Sunday, 30-degree temperature drops are on the way. Now, there was something added to that, and we're going to be going down to the freezing mark on Monday morning. And I'm like, okay, well that's fine and dandy, but that doesn't even take us back to near average for a low. So why is this? Why is this in the top at the in the at the, near the in the first part of the show? Early on, like up in the newscast, maybe the
We
second or
need
third story in. A 30-degree temperature drop from 70 to 40 is not really all that unusual, right? In the
well,
wintertime. So what's I mean,
I mean, it's not
I
like
don't
we're
know
talking.
if we were going from 30 to 0, yes. Okay. Yeah, absolutely. Move it at the top of the show. But I don't know. I just I'm thinking, why is it such that big a deal? We had two.
Because if it leads, it bleed. If it bleeds, it leads. And I guess people who are enjoying near 70, to them, dropping back into the 40s is like, oh no, we're going, that kind of thing.
Adam Lowe says the best model for predicting snowfall for the coast for the last 2 years has been the Icon model. I've looked at it from time to time. I've noticed that sometimes it really does fairly well, and then other times it's like, eh. But I'll take your word for it if you've been following it consistently. I've actually seen a few other people in the weather world of credibility mention the fact that the Icon model has actually done fairly well when it's come to snowfall for the coastal northeast.
Yeah, but what about the no gaps model, Joe?
Oh, the no gaps, or as we used to call it, the no craps. The no gaps is now the NamGem. AAA, by the way, AAA, you've been kind of trying to post the uh, same joke now for about 6 times, and the moderators are catching you, so you might as well just give it up. Um, so anyway, let's
I saw
see.
that joke, and I wasn't going to make a mention of it.
Yeah, no, it's just ridiculous. Adam Lowe, why all the rain? It's all due to the MJO this winter. Last winter, it's been and last winter it has been in the warm and wet phases. Adam, I have to tell you something. Everybody kind of grabs on. Every day I see this sort of obsession by folks out there, trying to grab on to something about what phase is the MJO going to be going in, and of course every model run has it, doing something a little bit different. The bottom line with all these things that you look at in this really kind of large scale, in my opinion, all right, when you look at that Madden-Julian oscillation, the stuff that's going on in the Indian Ocean with respect to wind patterns, that's like a general, a definition of what it is. And it was discovered by someone named Mr. Madden, not the football Madden, Someone named Mr. Madden and someone named Mr. Julian, not named after my grandson. So you've got that. You've got the polar vortex in the stratosphere, okay, and the stratospheric warming events that people talk about, whether the polar vortex is going to split and not going to split. You know what? All that stuff and a few other things, the SOI index, El Nino, La Nina, and all the rest of it. If they don't couple with the general atmospheric pattern that's going on, then I don't know what else to tell you. I mean, you can look at all this stuff all you want, and a few people have been saying, well, we don't have a La Nina, we don't have an El Nino, we have a La Nada from what it's been coined, and yet at the same time, when you look at the pattern we've been having, it resembled these last 4 weeks. It's resembled the La Nina pattern. Why? I don't know. Why is it doing that, considering that everything else that's going on out there says it should be something, should be otherwise? Beats the hell out of me, but sometimes this stuff doesn't couple. There are no magic bullets. I've stunned you to silence.
You could keep going. I'll just sit back here and listen.
Okay. And the other thing, Joe, is the elusive NAO, the North Atlantic Oscillation, the blocking in Greenland, except for brief appearances over the last, I think probably since 2010, 2011, and maybe for a brief time in 2012, 2013, you rarely see it anymore during the winter time. Why is that? I don't know.
I don't know either.
Let's see. I don't even know, Pal Blog. What's a POW forecast? Would you ever do a POW forecast? I don't know what that is, Pal Blog. So if you would explain.
Is he referring to my pick of the week?
The pick of, I don't know, could be.
When I was doing television, if I thought that we were going to have an exceptionally nice day, that I would call that the pick of the week, and I would put a POW on the 7-day outlook to promote. Now, tomorrow, for example, is worthy possibly of a pick of the week, and maybe it might just fall a little short because there may be some late day clouds, and for some it may not quite get much above 50 degrees, but still, by the standards of mid-January, it's going to be it will be, considering what we've been through the last couple of days and what we're going to see later on in the week. Tomorrow would be indeed the pick of the week if you're planning to do anything outdoors. Maybe that's what he's referring to.
Could be. Barry Goldberg's received the 2 iconic texts today from Amazon: Northeast Snowstorms Volume 1 and 2 by the very notable Paul Cosin and Louis Uccellini. If you're a snow weenie, you don't have those books, you really should get them, because they are they're great, and you can really get a good understanding as to what really makes a snowstorm in the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic states. I've got the listings on my Amazon link on Amazon, which you can find on the descriptor to this live stream, or the descriptor to this video, in case you're interested. But those are must-have books in my view.
I have autographed copies. I got
nice.
The two of them were at a storm conference at Western Connecticut State College back, I think, around 2006, 2008, or somewhere along those lines. And I brought all of their books. There's those 2 books, and they came out about 10 or 15 years earlier with the top Northeast snowstorms book as well. I for one wish that Paul Cosin were back on television during snow events like he was when he was on.
Oh, I loved it. I loved it when he was on.
Yeah.
By the way, the POW blog is a blog. POW is for powder, so it's a deep snow blog.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I loved watching Paul Cosin on the Weather Channel. That was, and fortunately, at least while he was on the Weather Channel, it was during a stretch where we had a lot of snowstorms across the Northeast in that period in the early 2000s. So you got to not only see him a lot, but I got to learn a lot from just watching him on air. I don't know why they took him off. He was very, very good at what he did.
Exactly.
But that's the way they program things these days. I've often referred to the powers that be that run these things. They're They're not weather savvy. They don't know what works in the weather world. But that's a whole nother conversation for another time.
Well, they
So,
show documentaries now. You know,
yeah,
I,
I don't watch. You
we're in the
know,
midst of a major, let's say, outbreak of thunderstorms. You turn it on, and they're showing me a documentary about a tornado outbreak out in the Midwest from 1997 or whatever. Why am I watching this when I should be? It was a much, the Weather Channel, in my humble opinion, Joe, was a much better product back in the 80s when it just was getting started. I mean, admittedly, to the average person, it might have been boring if you weren't into weather, but that's all you got was weather,
and you
seeing
know what? It was fine
radar
and dandy
satellite.
until somebody decided that they could make a lot of money with weather, and gradually it became much more and more important in the status of a newscast. And then of course, once that happens, they start saying, well, you know what? You shouldn't really be doing 5 minutes of this of weather. You should try to get everything in 45 seconds because
They were even showing movies. I mean,
yeah,
they
that
show Twister and The Perfect Storm or whatever. I mean, I can go to American Movie Classics or HBO to see that.
correct.
Not the Weather Channel.
Oh, I agree.
By the
Steve,
way,
Steve,
thank you, Steve Lapont, for his kick in $5. But he
yes,
also asked you, Joe, invite Judah Cohen back
I
again.
will try. I'll try to get Judah Cohen on. It's just kind of hard coordinating everybody's schedule for these. So I don't know if he can come on at the time that we do the live stream, or we'll have to pre-tape something with him. But I'll see what I can do. I was trying to get actually last week on one day. I was trying to get Bill Goodman to come on with you, so we'd have the three of us with the Brady Bunch boxes, but he couldn't do it. So everybody's got a tight schedule these days, but I will try. And thank you, Steve, for hitting Super Chat tonight. Really appreciate it. You got Jeopardy coming up at the top of the hour, don't you?
Yes, indeed. 8 minutes from now.
All right, so look, why don't you go get yourself all gussied up for Jeopardy? Put on a fresh face, and we'll call it a night. All
Well,
right?
I don't have to. I'll just sit here.
Oh, back with that thing, the
I'll plug in the
tubes.
TV and I'll watch. I don't know what happened to my rabbit ears, but
Oh, God, help us all. Well, you know what? Why don't you call your repairman on your rotary telephone?
I will do.
Okay, and
Hey,
we'll.
don't laugh. My daughter knows me. If my phone on my iPhone rings, it'll ring like
Like a rotary telephone.
like a rotary telephone.
Yes, I'm sure. All right. Have a great night, everybody. Thanks again, everyone, for being here. Steve Lapointe, thanks for hitting Super Chat tonight. Really appreciate it. We'll see what we can do about getting Dr. Judah Cohen on. If you're watching Dr. Judah Cohen, we'd love to have you on again, but I'll see if I can reach out to him with an email and see where we can go with that. And that's it. So make sure you got the weather app, the meteorologist Joe Chaffee weather app, Angry Ben's weather app, the Angry Weatherman. They're both free. You can jump on my subscription site on Patreon. Use my Amazon link. It's a great way to support my channel. It doesn't cost you an extra dime. Have a great night. I got my
Hurry up,
shameless.
Joe. I'm getting a hernia holding
I know.
this.
I have to get these shameless self promotions in. Good night, everybody.